All right, Seahawks fans, we got good news, we got bad news, and we got 2027 mock drafts. Yes, that's right. Even though this season is but in its infancy, the NFL pundits are already pumping out that content pipeline to talk about next year's draft. We're going to get to that. Like I said, a bunch of different other stories on today's episode of Seahawks Digest. What's going on, everybody? Christian Pedersen back with another episode of the show that the combination of drinking really good coffee in the morning and being excited about football has me going at lightning speed, so I apologize if I am talking too quickly. You can always watch this in halftime. If you want to drop a comment, like, subscribe, share, all those other things, great. If not, no worries. Ain't gonna phase me. I'm stoked, though, to see all of you that are willing to hit those YouTube buttons. First story I've got for you. Tory Horton. I want to pause and not have you guys hear this as overreaction of me being like, oh my God, Tory Horton, injury prone. What a waste. This is that. He missed practice. According to coach, he's working through some things, which is an incredibly vague answer. Football coaches, great at giving vague answers. I tried this I tried this injury designation with my wife to see if going through some things could get me out of having to be the stay-at-home with the toddler for the day. Turns out it doesn't pass muster for everyday life, but in the NFL ranks, you can just be going through some things and not have to show up for your job. I say that all somewhat sarcastically, but when you have, it's a guy who did miss a lot of time last year with an injury, and I think there is a desire to knee-jerk reaction and be like, big red flags, this is an issue, this guy is going to miss another time. I also think, though, and we'll talk about Jadarian Price in a second, that there are other injuries where coach is given somewhat of the same lack of concern and of gray vagueness, but in such a low temperature that I don't think there's much here. I also think that this has a lot to do with the long-term hopes for Tory Horton. And yes, he is somebody who is lower down on that receiving depth chart, but no, he's not somebody who is like, I don't think he's fighting for his job. So I don't think he needs to get rushed back out there, both in the sense of like this week, this season. Also, he's somebody who could grow into, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1. Cooper Kupp's going to have to retire. Between JSN and Sheed, not everyone can always make top dog. You have guys who are going to be that, and there's no sense to me in rushing his recovery, or even if it's not recovery, just rushing his return to be like, hey, Tory Horton long-term really didn't pan out because of week 2 of the 26 preseason or whatever. The second thing on that injury list that, like I said, kind of tying in the context clues together, Jadarian Price is back in action, and Price had been kind of listed as something where coach was never, coach is just saying he's going through it, he's missing some time, yada, yada, yada. So I retroactively, that's where how I grade the Tory Horton comments. Onto the Price news. I think this is great because I'm glad that our rookie superstar in the making is not hurt. I think it's great that he's back in the rotation. I also think it just starts a conversation of curiosity for me, because in addition to Jadarian Price, Jacardia Wright is back in action. So a lot of running backs coming off of the IL or the injury situation right now. Running backs and linebackers seem to be a revolving door of tons of names for the preseason right now. And in game 1, George Holani got a bulk of the carries, but behind George Holani, it was Jalen Moreau and then a bunch of camp legs and dudes who, I probably sound like a hater. They've come infinitely closer to touching NFL glory and greatness than I have or ever will or ever even could have come close to. So I apologize if I'm simplifying to just be like, these are guys that aren't going to make the roster, but these are guys that aren't going to make the roster. That all being said, with Jadarian Price coming back off of some, little bumps and bruises, what do you think his preseason usage is going to be? There's a lot of comments from people like Sean Alexander et al. That are like, oh my gosh, this guy is a superstar in the making. Could be a 1,000-yard rusher this year. He's going to be the pass catcher of the backs. He's going to be a lot a lot of talk in a lot of different directions for a guy who really hasn't actually done anything yet at the NFL ranks. And I don't say that to like disparage him. I'm saying that in terms of like, just don't know what he is. And so I will be really curious to see, are we going to get, just because he's coming off of some bumps and bruises, like a slow easing of, get a few Jadarian Price plays this coming game, a couple more the next game, and then just ease him in all season? Or is there going to be a preseason game where it's like, you know, hey, maybe week 1 was the George Holani game, week 2 is the Emmanuel Wilson game, week 3 is the Jadarian Price game, or something like that, where we see, hey, how does he look between the tackles? How does he look stretching it out to the outside? How does he look catching passes? Preseason is this weird quagmire, obviously, where not a lot of the ones are going, if any of the ones are going. So to see Jadarian Price running behind the third string O-line against another team's second string D, like, there's an incomplete picture of what he could be capable of. But I still kind of think that even coming off of a little slight, some boo-boos and whatnot, I am really curious to see this guy get cut loose for somewhere between 10 and 20 possessions. Just given that I don't think that's going to happen freely in the regular season, or if it does, he's the hot hand and he's who's cooking that day. And I don't see the road, especially with Sharps coming back, I don't see the roadmap to just being like, oh, by week whatever, Jadarian Price should be getting 25 carries a game minimum type thing. So that's where I'm like, hey, let's see if the preseason, we can't bust him loose a little bit. Curious to know what all of you guys think. Last thing I want to talk about is just the theater of the absurd. And that is that the pundit trio is already coming out about the 2027 draft. And I kind of just, as much as I want to dismiss it and be like, LOL, let's just talk about this season, I do think it is kind of an interesting watch, given so far on the defensive side of the ball, and I say defense probably to spoil it, of the predictions here, is that the Seahawks are going to be selecting 30th overall, and the solution is going to be Ahmed Moten, a defensive lineman from Miami. I think that this is both interesting in terms of giving us our flowers and saying, oh, it's going to be another great season for the Seahawks. But on the defensive side, so far, we have seen some guys saying that this is going to be the last. Some of our veterans saying that, hey, this is going to be it. This is our last season. We're out of here. We've seen Devon Witherspoon get his absolute payday, and that kind of leaves us at like a couple of sunsetting guys, a couple of guys right in their prime, and to think that, you know, we need to make any like additions to that in the now is kind of crazy. But at the same time, that's the genius of John Schneider and the way that he constructs these rosters, is that going all in is in a staggered way of like, we're going all in with a couple of vets who are going to be big price tags now, but when they are off the books, that'll then allow us to have an ever-increasing Devon Witherspoon contract price, and then we can go back in on some rookies. And it makes me think that, while this is somewhat irrelevant, it also is probably like, I'd be curious if some degree of looking at the draft stock upcoming allowed them to just be like, yeah, we're cool. Let's commit this money here. Let's let that guy retire next year and move on from there. That's what I got for you today. Just a couple of random stories as we count down still until the season starts. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, follow, all those other things. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.